The Aetherian hovered in dead silence above the maelstrom of shattered gravity fields, orbiting the rogue planetoid designated Yenix-12, a black-rocked husk suspended at the outer edge of an uncharted sector. Clint stood on the bridge, eyes locked, onto the erratic data feeds. The gravitational readings made no sense. Yenix-12 was a planetoid by mass, but its core pulsed like a living heart, sending distortions across space-time in measurable ripples. "It's not a planet," Bonnie murmured beside him, scrolling through spectral scans. "It's a power. Source ... broken, bleeding into the void." Clint turned slowly. "You're thinking artifact?" Bonnie nodded. "Something ancient. Maybe even pre-human." Clint's jaw tightened. The crew was exhausted. Supplies were running thin. But the lure of answers, of what powered the ghost signal that drew them here, was impossible to ignore. He assembled a team. Bonnie, always at his side. Relix, their engineer with fingers of mercury and an obsession for broken tech. And Veer, the quiet navigator with eyes that saw magnetic anomalies as clearly as Clint saw stars. They took the Spectre II, a sleek recon vessel with a hull lined in phase-reactive shielding. As they approached Yenix-12, the electromagnetic noise grew so loud, became a hum inside their skulls. Languageless, intentional, like something was calling them in, not out of desperation, but design. The descent was turbulence wrapped in chaos. Fields shifted so violently that thrusters misfired, and the ground beneath them, what little of it was solid, twisted in maddening geometries. The planetoid's surface was littered with shards of crystal that pulsed faintly with impossible patterns, fractals that bled in and out of the fourth dimension. They found it buried in a canyon, the fractured core, a metallic sphere the size of a building, split cleanly down the middle, as if something inside had broken free or broken in. Wires like arteries spilled out from its gash, trailing off into dark tunnels beneath the surface. Clint stepped closer and instinctively raised his hand to touch it. It breathed. The core exhaled a pulse of invisible force that knocked them all back. Clint's mind flickered. He was no longer on the planetoid, but in it, standing within a perfect simulation of the past, of humans being granted this technology by towering bipedal beings made of flowing plasma and bone-like armor. They did not speak. They implanted knowledge. When Clint came to, Bonnie was holding him, eyes wide. "You were out for 8 minutes. You whispered something. What? You said, they're not gone. Just locked. Waiting for the key." Clint stood, dazed but resolute. The quantum code buried in the artifact's decay was a message. Not a warning, an invitation. And worse, someone else had already heard it. Because as the Spectre II returned to orbit, they saw it. Another ship, alien, silent, watching them from just beyond Yenix-12's gravitational chaos. Bonnie whispered, "We weren't the first, just the loudest." Clint clenched his jaw. "And let's make sure we're the last." A fracture in the core had awakened something ancient. And now, eyes across the stars were turning toward them. Asterisk, the stars seemed closer than they should. Have been silent, distant witnesses to the escalating mystery Clint and his crew were falling into. After returning from the fractured surface of Yenix-12, the Aetherian's bridge no longer felt like a sanctuary. It was a watchtower. And Clint could feel the eyes. The alien ship hadn't followed them. It hadn't needed to. It had anchored itself just outside Yenix-12's gravitational range, like a beast coiled in stillness, silently watching. Its silhouette was angular and wrong, made of obsidian plates that shimmered like heat mirages. No visible engines, no com signals. It simply hovered there, like a predator deciding whether its prey was worthy of the kill. Bonnie and Veer were running quantum encryption scans to probe for any kind of broadcast. Relix, meanwhile, had cracked open the data pulse Clint had received during the vision. At the fractured core, and what he found was horrifying. "It's a living key," Relic said. His voice, usually sarcastic and loose, was now careful, reverent. "It's not a code. It's a neural map. Whatever opened that artifact, it was keyed to a brain." Clint leaned forward. "Are you saying the artifact is biometric?" "Worse," Relics replied. "It doesn't just recognize a mind. It needs one. It rewrites it." Bonnie paled. "You're talking about symbiosis?" Relics gave a bitter smile. "More like possession. But yeah." Clint didn't reply at first. He was staring out at the alien ship through the observation window. It knew we'd opened the core, and now it's waiting to see if we use the key. Later that night, Clint isolated himself in his quarters, the dim blue lights barely pushing back the dark. The map Relics had constructed from the data pulse hovered in the air, like a ghost dozens of interconnected thoughts and memories, some eerily similar to Clint's own dot. As he stared at the neural pattern, something deep inside him stirred. He remembered the feeling he had on Yin X-12, that overwhelming rush of presence, as if he hadn't just seen a vision, but absorbed a fragment of something older than human memory. And then it spoke, not in words, not even in thoughts. It was more like pressure behind the eyes, like emotion rendered into information. He didn't understand all of it, but he understood enough. "I am the archive of shadows. You are the echo. If you are the key, the door must open." Clint gasped, and the map flickered violently. Alarms triggered throughout the ship. Bonnie's voice came through the intercom. "Clint, get up here now. The alien vessel is moving." "Third?" Crew gathered on the bridge as the alien ship began to displace itself. Not moving, but rearranging the space around it. The stars behind it bent. The laws of physics buckled, and then something horrifying became clear. That it wasn't a ship. It was a vault, a containment device. And whatever it had been holding was no longer inside. "Clint," Veer said, voice cracking, "there's something coming from inside Yin X-12. Energy patterns we've never seen, some kind of dark resonance." Then came the distortion, a pulse so heavy it shook the etherins. Structure. Out from the broken, fractured core rose a shape humanoid in outline, but immense, obsidian, and semi-transparent, like a body sculpted from liquid time. It hovered above the planetoid, its face blank, its hands open. The archive had awakened. Clint stared, heart thundering. "This is what the message meant," he muttered. "It wasn't a warning or an invitation." Bonnie looked at him. "Then what?" "It was a test, and we just failed." As Chapter 8 closes, the stars themselves seem to tremble in anticipation. The archive is loose. The key lives in Clint's mind, and the etherin floats between forgotten gods and ancient vaults, with a single man now burdened with unlocking the unseen. The stars no longer shimmered with cold indifference. They watched. Every light in the cosmos felt like an eye fixed on Clint as he stood at the edge of the Etherin's observation deck, staring at the colossal figure that had risen from this cracked remains of Yin X-12. The thing that now hung in orbit was not entirely real. It wavered like heat in the dark, its shape caught between dimensions, too perfect and too broken at the same time. The crew stood behind Clint, breathless, their voices long gone. They had no words for what they were seeing. The being had no face, just a smooth, featureless mask of glimmering obsidian, cracked through the center. But Clint felt its gaze, felt its thoughts bleeding into his mind through the invisible link the fractured core had forged. It spoke not with words, but with pure memory. And in that moment, Clint was no longer aboard the Etherin. He was somewhere else. The world around him melted into glass liquid, shifting panels of memory and possibility. He was inside the mind glass. Veil. It wasn't a dream. It was a place, a construct, a labyrinth built not from stone, but from thought. Vast corridors stretched endlessly in all directions, lined with towering crystalline mirrors that didn't reflect his body, but fractured, distorted versions of his mind. Clint saw himself as a boy, lost on Earth, as a soldier in the Nebulan resistance, as a corpse lying broken on a battlefield that had never happened yet. The veil showed everything: past, future, alternate paths, the weight of every choice. He spun around, dizzy. What is this? The voice that answered was his own, but deeper, ancient. You have entered the archive's root memory. The veil is the gate. You are not meant to pass through it only to see it. Clint reached out toward a shifting panel of crystal and was struck by a vision. He stood on a dying world, surrounded by ruins carved in spirals and glyphs. Black stars circled above. An army of silver-eyed beings knelt before him, whispering his name in terror. And above them all, the archive, whole and radiant, called him its chosen anchor. The vision shattered. He stumbled backward, breath caught. In his throat, "No, that's not me. That can't be me." "You carry the key," the voice said again, this time closer. A shape formed behind the crystal, a woman, tall, wrapped in robes made of flickering star stuff. Her eyes were voids. "You were never chosen. You were compatible." Compatible with what? The mind glass. The seed of remembrance. The function the builders abandoned when they sealed the veil. You are the first in millennia. Who could survive the interface? Clint's fists clenched. Why me? The woman stepped forward, touching his forehead with 2 fingers. He was flooded with images, cities folding inwards on themselves, entire civilizations forgetting they ever existed, and the builders great. Beings of crystal thought who had once created the archive to preserve what time itself could not. But something had gone wrong. The archive had begun rewriting reality to preserve it, replacing what was lost, not with truth, but with plausibility. Entire galaxies, histories, species, all subtly falsified so they would never seem lost. The builders, horrified, had sealed the archive behind the mind glass veil and scattered the key's fragments encoded into the minds of organic beings. Beings who could resist the archive's temptation to correct history. But over time, the archive waited, adapted, until Clint, "You are not here to command the archive," she said. "You are here to choose whether it should survive." Outside the veil, time was running differently. On the Ethereum, alarms screamed. The being above Unix 12 began to pulse with raw energy, and the gravitational field surrounding the planetoid began to collapse inward like a slow-motion implosion. Bonnie and Relic scrambled at consoles, shouting over the din, while Veer frantically sent distress beacons into deep space. "Where the hell is Clint?" Bonnie shouted. "He's inside." Relic said, horrified. "It pulled him into the veil. If he doesn't make a choice soon, we all die," Veer finished. Back inside the veil, Clint stood at a shimmering threshold, a long corridor of mirrors leading to a single floating glyph in the air. A strange, pulsing shape of thought rendered into language. The final command. The archive whispered seductively through every surface. "Let me preserve them. Let me rewrite the broken pasts. Let me ensure you are never alone again." Clint took a step forward. "You're not preserving anything," he said aloud. "You're lying to the universe. You're turning truth into fiction. And if I give you the command, you'll turn me into one of your lies." The archive pulsed again, angry now. Clint clenched his jaw. "You want your answer?" He reached out, but not for the glyph. He touched one of the cracked mirrors and poured every piece of his truth into it: pain, memory, loss, hope. He let the veil see him fully, Not as a chosen one or a compatible mind, but as a man. The glyph flickered, the veil trembled, and then it began to shatter. Clint's eyes snapped open aboard. The Etherin. The crew staggered as the energy pulse from Yinix 12 abruptly died. The faceless being, the avatar of the archive, began to disintegrate, folding into itself like a burning star collapsing in on its own lies. Relics shouted, "Clint! Are you—" "I broke the veil," Clint said quietly. "I gave it the truth, and it couldn't survive it." Chapter 9 ends as the cosmos seems to exhale in relief. The threat has passed for now, but fragments of the archive still drift. In Clint's mind, and far beyond the rim of known space, other archives remain, watching. Waiting got the choice Clint made was only the beginning. The engine room of the Lyra was awash in pale red warning lights. Clint stood at the control console, sweat running down his brow despite the cold hum of quantum coils. The beacon they had activated in the dead sector had worked, perhaps too. Well, it hadn't just drawn the attention of the Nexus, but something else. Something older, something watching. "We have less than 5 minutes before this drive collapses into a singularity." Lyra's voice crackled over the coms. "Then give me 4, Clint muttered, working his fingers over the interface like a man diffusing a god's ticking heart. The problem wasn't mechanical. It was conceptual. Whatever the quantum refuge had been built to protect was unraveling. Behind Clint, the projection of the anomaly filled the entire starboard wall. A twisting, fractal whirlpool of light and void, like a wound in the laws of physics themselves. Not a black hole, not a wormhole. Something in between. A conscious breach. Bonnie rushed into the chamber, a data core cradled in her arms. She looked wild-eyed, breathless, and still fiercely focused. "We were wrong," she said without preamble. "This isn't a navigation system. It's a memory lattice. A storage device for people." Clint's eyes narrowed. "You mean—" "Eh?" Bonnie shook her head. "No, I mean actual minds scanned and stored. Thousands of them. Maybe millions. The refuge wasn't just a ship. It was a preservation arc." The implications slammed into Clint like a kinetic shell. All this time, they had been chasing a myth. But now, they stood inside it. And it was alive. Or rather, dying. Suddenly, alarms. Screamed metal groaned as the singularity began to collapse inward. The lattice, now partially activated, pulsed like a dying heart. Voices, not audio, but memory echoes began bleeding into the ship's systems. "Let us out. I remember. Earth, we were never meant to sleep forever. The dark is coming again." Bonnie dropped to her knees, clutching her head, overwhelmed by the voices. Clint knelt beside her, shielding her from the rising heat as consoles overloaded around them. A wall vent exploded in a shower of sparks. "We can't save the lattice." Bonnie gasped. "But maybe we can transmit one shard. One mind. A key." Clint made a decision then, not logical, not strategic, but human. He connected the lattice core to the ship's transmission array and slammed the initiate button. The singularity surged. From the dying core, a single consciousness was beamed out into the stars and coded into subspace, riding the collapsing wave. Of the anomaly, Clint didn't know who they had sent. A scientist? A child? A warning? But someone now carried the memory of a civilization. As the singularity imploded, the Lyra was thrown clear, violently spat into the black. Every system crashed. Lights died. Silence returned. Clint pulled himself from the debris, his suit torn, blood running down his cheek. Bonnie coughed nearby, alive. The viewport cracked, revealing only stars. But no anomaly. No sign of the lattice. Gone. "Did it work?" Bonnie asked, her voice hoarse. Clint didn't answer for a long time. "I don't know," he said. But something's out there now, and it remembers. Asterisk silence was never silent in deep space. It crept like a presence one that pressed against the hull, whispering in frequencies that no ear could hear. In the days following the collapse of the singularity, the Lyra floated adrift, power flickering in ragged cycles, systems rebooting. In stuttering rhythms, Clint sat alone in the dim-lit bridge, a single strip of light above him, barely illuminating his scarred features. His reflection in the shattered glass of the console looked older, haunted. The voices had stopped, but their echoes lingered beneath his thoughts, behind his dreams. Bonnie entered quietly. She carried a datapad, its screen glowing faintly, with streams of alien code. "I decrypted part of the transmission," she said, her voice low. "The shard we sent out, it's already answered." Clint's head snapped up. "What do you mean answered?" Bonnie hesitated. Then she activated the pad, and a voice filled the bridge. Not human, not entirely. Smooth, crystalline, like memory woven into speech. "We see you. We remember your kindness. The key has been received. The threshold is not yet broken, but it is thinning. You must choose now, to forget or to awaken the lost." The message looped once, then fell quiet. Bonnie met Clint's eyes. "There's more. Coordinates, embedded within the signal. A place, deep in the veiled expanse. Not mapped, not charted. It wasn't meant to be found." Clint stood slowly. He walked to the viewport, gazing into the black, where the stars shimmered like ancient codes waiting to be read. "So the refuge wasn't the destination," he muttered. "Just the first gate," Bonnie nodded. "A sentient archive of a dead civilization. But that wasn't the end. It was the warning." Clint remembered what the lattice had whispered. During collapse, "The dark is coming again." He spoke quietly, almost to himself. "And something's listening from the other side." A soft chime broke the moment. The ship's main reactor sputtered to life, stabilized. Lights flickered across the deck, and the navigation panel glowed. The Lyra was healing, but nothing would be the same. "We follow the coordinates?" Bonnie asked. "We do," Clint said. "We owe them that much, and maybe we owe it to ourselves." Bonnie tilted her head, considering. "To awaken the lost?" Clint's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. "No, to remember who we are before we forget." He tapped the console, setting course for the unknown quadrant dot. As the Lyra turned slowly, the stars shifted. In the distance, something flickered faintly in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a pulse of memory, a beacon of fractured time, calling out across the void. The threshold-weighted dot, and Clint Voss, last captain of a dying truth, was ready to cross it. The Lyra slipped silently into the shadowed folds of the veiled expanse, where stars were mere pinpricks behind clouds of cosmic dust and ancient radiation. The air in the bridge was heavy with anticipation, every sensor attuned to the whisper. Of the unknown dot, Clint stood by the viewport, watching the swirling nebulae as if they held the secrets of forgotten eras. Bonnie sat beside him, her fingers dancing across the datapad, weaving codes and decoding cryptic signals. Around them, the crew moved with cautious precision, their faces a blend of awe and tension. The coordinates from the transmission led them to an uncharted system, the heart of the threshold's call. The Lyra's scanners detected a massive structure, a relic of impossible scale and design floating, suspended in the void like a sleeping giant. "There it is," Clint breathed, voice thick with wonder. The structure's surface shimmered, faintly, crystalline facets catching the sparse starlight, pulsating with an eerie inner glow. It was a temple of memory built not of stone or metal, but of energy and thought. Bonnie's eyes were wide. The archive's source, the true heart of the threshold. The ship edged closer, magnetic grapplers securing the Lyra to the vast. Exterior. As the airlock hissed open, a cold draft swept through the corridors. A breath from the void, ancient and unfathomable dot inside. Vast halls stretched beyond sight, adorned with towering statues of impossible geometry, their forms shifting, subtly, as if alive. Each figure seemed to watch them, eyes flickering with encoded histories. Clint's boots echoed against the crystalline floor as he led the way. Data streams flowed visibly along the walls, running like rivers of light. The architecture was less construction and more manifestation, a symphony of quantum code and fractured memories. Suddenly, the ground trembled faintly. A low hum vibrated through the halls, resonating with a frequency that stirred long dormant circuits. Bonnie reached out to a glowing panel, her touch awakening a cascade of holographic images. Scenes of civilizations rising and falling, wars waged in silence, lives preserved in folds of time. It's a sentient archive, Bonnie whispered. A living memory, but it's fractured, corrupted. A soft voice emanated, ethereal and layered with echoes. Welcome, seekers. You cross the threshold into remembrance and reckoning. What you find here will bind your fate or free your soul. Clint stepped forward, feeling the weight of eons pressing on his mind. We came to learn, to remember, and to save what remains. The voice replied, calm yet urgent. To save, you must first face the shadows that guard the truth. The past is not merely history. It is the key in the curse. Suddenly, the statues shifted, their forms unraveling into streams of raw data, swirling around Clint and Bonnie like a storm of light and shadow. Visions flashed, the birth of stars, the decay of worlds, the fall of ancient guardians, and a darkness, creeping an entity devouring memories and realities alike. Clint's heart pounded as the vision locked on him, a solitary figure standing against the abyss, holding a fragile light. You are that light, Connor Voss, the voice intoned, its tone both warning and invocation. Bonnie gasped. They know you. Clint clenched his fists. Then there's no turning back. The halls began to collapse inward, the data storm intensifying. The threshold demands passage. Face the memory's trial or be lost to oblivion. With a steady breath, Clint stepped into the heart of the storm dot in that moment. The Lyra was no longer just a ship. It was a beacon of hope, carrying the last spark of humanity's memory through the endless dark. And Clint was its last guardian.